Welcome back. Going to do another little video just showing some of the features of Lightroom and probably some processing in Nik Colour Efex Pro and in DxO Viewpoint. This is one of a series of shots I took in Berlin last month. It's the new Reichstag buildings and as you know I quite like reflections. This was the this was the first shot that I took of this, thinking about this reflection in the windows of the buildings across the river. Two people here giving a sense of scale, some people on this in this reflection on the walkway. This was just grabbed while they were sitting there, and then thinking a little bit more about the composition I ultimately want to get. I zoomed out, gave myself a little bit more room. We then have this character in the building and characters outside the building, so there's a nice this thing inside outside. I ultimately actually processed this one with two cyclists. Caught the cyclist there, wasn't quite sure of the positioning. We've got a character in there and this guy here. This one, I've still got the guy on the bridge, the other guy's gone, but the cyclists maybe are more clearly framed. You know, with all the people I don't want in my shots in red, the two cyclists have to be dressed in black. There you go. So I'm going to go back to this second one here, and I'll go because I haven't processed this yet. So nothing's been done with this. So the first thing we do is go into the develop module. And these are all raw files. I shoot in raw. You just can't do what I need to do with a JPEG because it demands really more manipulation than a JPEG is going to have the information to let me do. So again, first thing I'm going to go to lens corrections, and I'm going to put in the lens correction and remove chromatic aberration. This will save you a lot of bother because there's no doubt edge artifacts creep in, and chromatic aberration, even if you're working in chromatic aberration, will contribute to those. You want to correct that as early as possible. If some lenses are worse than this than others, and I do think it is a problem that's greater with full frame cameras. Certainly the Canon L lenses on the 5D Mark II, the 24-105 is shocking. And considering the price, you'd expect something better. This was taken with my one of the Sonys. It was taken with the Alpha 6000 with the Zeiss. Is a really great lens, sharp lens, 16-70 lens. So got that. Then the next spot is to go into detail. We've got 100 ISO, so really shouldn't need a lot, but since I'm going to process this in Colour Efex Pro, I'm just going to bring in noise reduction about 25 or so. Leave it at that. Pre-sharpening, we can do a little bit of pre-sharpening as well, bring it up to about 40 and then mask it so that we're only sharpening the distinct edges. So I've got my finger on the Alt key. I'm not going to pander to Apple users. Whatever is the equivalent in Apple, I don't care. I bring that up and mask it out. There we go. So we've sharpened that up. So that's probably all I'm going to do. Perhaps we could look at the effect of putting a little bit of a gradient there to bring the lighting across the image to balance that out. So you can have a look at the effect of that. That's without and that's with. Just bringing that down so that we've got a smoother lighting. I love this. This is a variable neutral density electronic filter for your camera. As long as you can take it to extremes. That's half a stop. You know, we can take it right. You can use it really creatively and take it right down if you want to. But you can see, look, we're actually getting exposure detail in the sky there by taking that down. I mean, this is the thing. We could process this shot in a couple of ways. Maybe maybe think about doing that. Let's go back to where we were. So add graduate enable graduated filter. Oh, that's it off. Graduated filter, put it on. That's our half a stop. So that's going to even out the exposure. Okay, so we'll leave that. But the other thing we could do with this, if we want to manipulate it in Lightroom, is actually go for bringing out more detail in Lightroom. So let's bring down the highlights to see what's lurking. Not an awful lot. The other thing we can do is bring the overall exposure down. Now we're beginning to get detail in the sky here, which I quite like, and this is a wee bit dark, but we can bring the shadows up a little bit there. What's that doing? Yeah, just to bring that up. It's still a very flat image. I mean, if you want to process just in Lightroom, use the clarity tool, and you know we could bring this up, but and maybe put a little bit of clarity in there. So we've brought a little bit of detail into the sky by dropping the highlights and increasing the shadows, dropping the general exposure down. I mean, we can play with that. We've got lots of room to maneuver because we've got a raw file with lots of latitude in it. So we're going to leave that at that, and then see what it looks like when we take that out into Colour Efex Pro. So it's when it installs itself as a plugin for Lightroom, right click, it's in the edit in menu, and click on Colour Efex Pro and wait for it to load up. There we go, there's our thing. Now what's happening is Lightroom is now using the manipulations that we have chosen, applying them to our raw file and creating a new TIFF file, which it's then opening in the Nik software. So there we go, and we've, as I said on the other video, what we've got is our the settings that we used previously are held by default in this. Now we've immediately got detail in the sky because of what we did in Lightroom, and now we've got a very contrasty image. We can take the contrast down, which will lighten up those blacks. We can play around with these boyos here, and we can actually reduce the shadows there, and we can apply a bit more contrast because I quite like that. I've reduced the amount of saturation applied here. We're down at 9%, which is fine, and we can check out and see what different levels of detail extraction are doing. Not getting a big difference further on, up between about 60% or so. And you can see the amazing detail that has brought out in the reflection and brought that to life, and given us detail in the sky. Really like that that effect. We can put the saturation up a little bit, but we can play with saturation and stuff back in Lightroom, where maybe we have more subtle controls. I mean, we could add another filter here. This is the thing. So we can select. These are my favorites that I use. You know, so we're heaping something on top of. You know, there's tonal filter, which we could use as an alternative. We can turn off the detail extractor and see what the tonal contrast is on its own. There's a high pass filter. We could play around with those, but I really don't want that, so I can get rid of that. So we're going to go back to our detail extractor, turn it on. That's the sort of effect I want. I'm going to bring back some of the shadows just to get a bit more contrast there. We can preserve some of the highlights. We'll do that, and just bring back some of those highlights. So I think that will do for the moment. We've got the detail that we want, and I will save that. So that manipulation is being applied to the TIFF file being sent back into Lightroom. So that is our manipulation there. So if I want to play around with it, I've still got plenty of room here. I can boost the local contrast a little bit if I want a bit more of that local contrast or global contrast. I can brighten the shot up a little bit and still bring the highlights down. I don't have as much ability to do those manipulations as I did at the RAW, processing stage because we're dealing with a TIFF. A lot of our information has been thrown away. You know, we're manipulating. It's like we've thrown away the digital negative. Now we're manipulating the print itself. Always better to try and do these things with exposure, particularly exposure and detail on the raw file. If we don't like the results, we can go back to our file. There's all our manipulations here that we did, and we can improve on that. We can say, well, look, what was wrong? Maybe I need to add some things here, boost the clarity a bit more, maybe actually brighten the overall image up a little bit. Maybe I took it down too far to bring the sky detail in, but we'll work with this. I'm going to go back here just to where I give it a little clarity boost. If I want to, there's the panic button. We can reset. That will take the shot right back to where it was imported from Colour Efex Pro. And again, you can do that with your original file. You can just hit reset and start again. I don't advise you to do that. What I would suggest you do is go back to your import level and then right click on the image and create a virtual copy. And what this will do is create a virtual copy zeroed, and then you can work on that. Now, virtual copies are not real. They're virtual. You've got one raw file in there, and what you're doing is saying to Lightroom, enter it in the catalogue twice. In other words, list it twice. So listing number one, and we'll do that just to show that. So listing number one is the photo we worked on, and we can, because we made the virtual copy right back at the import level, we can get all our manipulations back. So we've got that. So we've got, and here it is, 1 of 2, 2 of 2. Here's our virtual copy. All this is a representation of the same raw file. And what we're going to say now is, let's try some different manipulations and apply them to this one. You've actually only got one raw file still. It's still the same raw file. This is, what do they call it? These are, oh, I've forgotten the term. But we're not doing anything to the raw file. These are then going to be applied to the raw file to create a new file whenever we export or choose to edit in another program or print it. The raw file is unaltered. It's still there. If you go into Explorer, it's still there. So I'm going to finish this video here, and then we're going to do part 2 where I'm going to bring this into Viewpoint, and we're going to do some manipulations in Viewpoint. So that'll do for the moment.